New episode on binding a collection view using RxDataSources, which is actually an extension to RxSwift. If you already seen my earlier video where we are using binding TableView using RxDataSources. So similarly, we can even bind a collection view using RxDataSources. It's something similar to how we have already done for a table view. So I'll just use the same code base which we had already used, where we are having let's say a data source in the view model, so which was very specific to, in that case, a table view. So you had something called as Rx table view section animated data source. You can also have something called as Rx table view a plain section data source instead of the animated one. So that will just render the view without any animation. So similarly, for a collection view, we need to create one more data sources which will be mapping to the actual items which already are created to show the table view, something like this. So instead of all the details maybe there, we will just show all these indexes which are being passed to the individual to do items. So let's get started. All that I need to start doing here is to add a collection view into this existing layout. So we already have this here, table view. I'll just remove the constraint added just so that we can add a collection view between them. Collection view. All I need to do is drag and drop. Just we'll have just enough space to include it. Maybe this height is enough. So just keep it closer to the table view, and that's all I need to do is to add the relevant constraints. And that's it. We are all set with adding the collection view. Let's add the outlet. So that's my view controller, where we already have the table view. Just that I need to now add the collection view. Just call it collection view items. So I have the collection view outlet added now. So for this collection view, we may also need a collection view cell, custom one. Let's create that collection view cell. Let me call it to do collection view cell, and also need an XIB for that. So that's my collection view. I'll just have a function called configure, similar to how we had for configuring a table view cell. So it's the same thing. Have a function called configure, where we'll just pass configure with, let's say, a view model, which is actually the same to do item view model we will use. And let's add a label to this. Set its background color to maybe black, so that we are clear. We just can differentiate between the table view and the collection view. Let me add a label, and let that be white. Just a little bit customizations, and center align, and let me just have a reference, and all I need to do is to add the constraints required, and rotate frames. That's it. It's center aligned. So that's my label. Let me add an outlet to that. We call it label LBL to do index, maybe. Yeah, and within this configure function, all I will do is to bind it. So I have a view model property called text value. It's not an observable, so let's just keep the text set. So that's my label. Maybe I don't need the text value. Let me just get the ID. So that will configure the IDs. Maybe I'll just add the hash as well. Hash ID, similar to how we are represented it here. And then that's it. My TableView cell is ready for configuration. All I can do is go back to my view controller. So to the to-do view controller, and okay, I need to create the data source for the collection view. Let's do that. Let's call it collection data source. So it should be Rx collection view. So this is something which is already provided by RxDataSources. So once you import and install it in your project, you will get the Rx collection view sectioned animation data source. So let's use that. Section view model. It's more or less this same like how it is being done for a table view. Just maybe a little different, not major, but then you'll just see one minor difference there where it will ask for one more argument where it needs to configure a supplementary view. I'm not taking that up now. I'll just do the configuration for let's say this part where I'll just configure the cell now. So that's the basic structure. Because of the recent changes, we cannot directly have it without this basic construct made available. So we are just doing a fatal error, because if you don't implement this, or if you don't set your data source, then it'll just crash with the fatal error. So this will make sure that we can even set a message here saying it's not being the data source is not being used for configuration. So with this being done, okay, we need some more stuff to do, like just like how the data source values being set. Okay, it's not here. Let's go back to the view controller. There's it. Okay, the view controller where we are setting the table view data source, something like this, where we filter out and then map and then use it, something like this. So we just need to do the same stuff here. Let's call it the collection view data source, which is again pointing to the same data source. Sorry, it should point to the collection view data source. And let's get the filtered items, which is what we are right now using to bind the table view. The same thing we will use to bind the collection view as well. Filtered items, because if you see the UI, if you start searching, it gives you a filtered array every time. So let's say for a search or even for a filter, for binding with the table view or even a collection view, we will not be using the actual source but the filtered source. This will make sense when we don't need the main source not to be altered at all. So that's the only reason we are using a filtered items. So let's again create that, something similar to what we had done for the table view. The same thing we'll be using here as well. There is no much difference. So let's get rid of all this. So we will again use a sectioned model because we already had it segregated based on a personal or a work type. So the same structure we are following here. So, and then call the bind function, and bind it with the collection view items Rx items property, and just pass the data source, which should be in this case the collection view data source. So then call the dispose bag general construct for creating a subscription. So that's done now. So we have right now the view models, filtered items. It's the same item which is already bound with even the table view is now bound with the collection view, and we are mapping to the section view model, and which is already something similar to this. Is how the data source is right now, where each we are separating the to-do items based on whether it is a work to-do item or a personal to-do item. So that's why we have two sections, and within each section we are filtering out the whole items array based on the type. Like if it is personal, it comes under the personal, and then directly bind that to binding it to the table view. Now we are binding it to the collections view. So that being done, are we done yet? No, because we still need to do the stuff where I need to register the cell to the collection view. So let me call it collection nib, and I'll call this as was the nib name which we had created to do collection view cell. That's my nib, and to register that I need to also create an identifier. This will become pretty easy if you had used something called as RxSwift, r.swift, sorry, which I have explained in a separate tutorial, where you can easily get rid of all these code where you need to set an identifier or to register, and all that can be easily done using r.swift. So you can watch out for that episode if you want to know more. So this is my collection identifier, just giving some random names. So collection view items, register the nib. So that's my collection nib for the collection identifier. So that's my registration is complete now. So what am I left with now? I need to configure my cell. That's left. So let me call view model dot collection data source dot configure cell. No difference, you can just directly use this same construct. Let me just create that. So data source remains the same, it needs 4 parameters. So data source the same, instead of table view it's now the collection view. It has similar index path and the item, which is actually the individual items, the view model items, to do item, which needs to be used to configure this. So that's what we have now. And just use in, we just created and enlarge it, and then let the cell be created for this, which will be the collection view dot dequeue, the same stuff which we do normally, reusable identifier, self dot collection identifier, and for index path, which is again index path. So it will be of type to do collection cell. That's what we are configuring. So it has a configure function which we created now, so we just need to call with the item, so that will configure it and then just return the cell. Similar thing which we need to do. So that's all what we need to do here to configure the cells. I guess now it should work. So pretty much done. Let's just run and see. Let's hope the magic works here, where you will see some stuff happening whenever there is a change happening in the table view. So you see there 2367, that's been configured. And let me see how what is with this much number of lines of code, whatever we have achieved so far. I can change stuff in the table view. Let's say I make something as done. See, the change happened even in the top data source. So it's bound to the same data source, just that whenever a change happens here, it gets reflected there as well. So everything is done now, I guess. Okay, this just 27, everything works fine. If you remove something here, data source will get updated and it should render the same thing here. So I'm just going to remove, let's say, item 3. Bingo, you see that it's gone from the collection view as well. Pretty easy, isn't it? It's just some lines of code using RxDataSources that you can achieve something as complex as configuring a table view, a collection view, and then binding some data source as easily as this. Hope you enjoyed this. I will come back with more on this in the upcoming tutorials. Until then, bye.